Good morning, y'all. Today we're turning our attention to one of the most important and influential works in Western literature, Virgil's Aeneid. Now we're jumping forward in time about 400 years from Sophocles to Virgil, and we're moving from Greek to Rome. But don't you worry, these Romans were absolutely obsessed with the Greek culture, so there's plenty of connections for us to explore. Before we dive into the epic itself, we need to understand when and why Virgil wrote the Aeneid. This wasn't just some dusty old poem. It was highly political and deeply meaningful to Romans in Virgil's day. Publius Vergilius Maro, known as Virgil, lived during one of the most tumultuous periods in Roman history. He witnessed the collapse of the Roman Republic, the assassination of Julius Caesar in 44 BC, and the civil war that followed. The Aeneid was commissioned by Emperor Augustus, who was the adopted son of Octavian, who emerged victorious from these wars and established the Roman Empire. Augustus wanted a national epic that would, 1, give Rome an origin story as impressive as Homer gave to the Greeks, 2, connect his own family to the myth, 3, justify Roman imperialism, and 4, establish Roman identity. It's like if someone powerful today commissioned a best-selling author to write an epic justifying their right to rule. It's literature, but it has a political purpose. The Aeneid tells the story of Aeneas, a Trojan prince who escapes the fall of Troy. And yes, that's the same Troy that was in the Iliad. Now, he then embarks on a divinely ordained mission to found a new city that will eventually become Rome. The epic is divided into 12 books, and we are going to focus on the selections from your reading. But here's an overview of the whole thing. Books 1 through 6 is Aeneas' journey. His fleeing from the burning Troy with his father and his son. Then they wander the Mediterranean facing storms that are sent by the hostile goddess Juno. Aeneas has a passionate love affair with Queen Dido of Carthage, but abandons her when he's reminded of his destiny. And Dido commits suicide, cursing Aeneas and his descendants, explaining the later Punic Wars with Rome. Aeneas then travels to the underworld to meet his father's shade and glimpse Rome's glorious future. Books 7 through 12 is the war in Italy. Aeneas arrives in Italy, where he's promised to marry Lavinia, the daughter of King Latinus. Juno starts war between the Trojans and the Latin people. The Latin prince, Tumus, Lavinia's original suitor, leads the opposition. After much opposition, Aeneas kills Tumus in a single combat, securing his place in Italy. The overall message is clear. Rome was founded through divine will, sacrifice, and struggle, and Augustus's rule is the fulfillment of an ancient destiny. Just look at how Virgil begins his masterpiece. I sing of arms, and the man who, exiled by fate, first came from the coast of Troy to Italy and to Lavinian shores, hurled around endlessly by land and sea, by the will of the gods, by cruel Juno's unforgiving anger. Right from the get-go, Virgil tells us that this is both a war epic and a story about a particular hero. He's combining both Homeric epics, the war focus of the Iliad and the journey focus of the Odyssey, into one massive work. But unlike Homer, who asked the muse to sing through him, Virgil says, I sing. The subtle difference shows a shift in how poets viewed themselves. Virgil isn't just a channel for divine inspiration. He asserts his own authorial control. Now, every epic has values at its core. In the Iliad, it was Kleos, glory. In the Odyssey, it was Nostos, homecoming. In the Aeneid, the central value is pietas, which isn't exactly the same as our English word piety. Roman pietas means duty to the gods, duty to one's family, and duty to one's homeland or state. Aeneas is repeatedly described as pious Aeneas, not because he's particularly religious in the modern sense, but because he puts his duties before his personal desires. When Mercury reminds him of his mission, Aeneas leaves the woman he loves because he has a duty to Rome. When Troy falls, he carries his elderly father on his shoulders while leading his son by the hand, embodying family duty. This emphasis of duty over personal happiness is distinctly Roman and quite different from Greek heroism. Achilles fights for personal glory. Odysseus wants to get home to his family, but Aeneas sacrifices his own happiness for the future of his people. Like the Greek epics, the Aeneid features gods who meddle constantly in human affairs, but Virgil adds a strange sense of overarching fate that even the gods must ultimately respect. The divine conflict centers on Venus, Aeneas' mother, who supports the Trojans and wants Rome to rise, Juno, who hates the Trojans because of that beauty contest Paris judged and tries to prevent Rome's founding, and then Jupiter, who enforces fate and eventually makes Juno accept the inevitable rise of Rome. The divine machinery serves both literary and political purposes. It creates drama and explains setbacks. It's not Aeneas' fault. Juno is just being petty. But it also underscores the idea that Rome's dominance is divinely ordained. Now let's talk about one of the most heartbreaking love stories in all of literature, Aeneas and Dido. That episode showcases the conflict between personal desire and public duty that runs throughout the epic. But then Jupiter sends Mercury to remind Aeneas of his duty. When he tells Dido that he must leave, she's devastated. She curses him and his future Romans. Then she burns a funeral pyre, climbs upon it, and stabs herself with Aeneas' sword as his ship sails away. This tragic episode does several things. 1, it explains the historical enmity between Rome and Carthage. 2, it portrays the cost of Rome's founding. And 3, it shows that being a destined hero ain't all glory. It requires painful sacrifice. Some modern readers sympathize more with Dido than with duty-bound Aeneas, but Homer's readers would have seen her as a tragic but necessary sacrifice for Rome's greater destiny. Just like Odysseus, Aeneas journeys to the underworld in Book 6, but for a different purpose. While Odysseus sought information for his journey home, Aeneas goes to meet his father and learn about Rome's future. The underworld sequence is full of symbolic encounters. Aeneas meets Dido's shade, who turns away from him silently. He sees the souls of great heroes waiting to be reborn, and his father shows him the parade of future Roman heroes. Most importantly, Aeneas' father explains the Roman mission to Aeneas. Remember, Roman, there will be your arts to teach the ways of peace to those you conquer, to spare defeated people and tame the proud. This famous line encapsulates Rome's imperial ideologies, that their conquests bring civilization and peace, not just domination. It's a self-justifying view of empires that has been echoed by imperial powers throughout history. He uses techniques like foreshadowing. Dido's curse anticipates the Punic Wars. And symbolism, the golden bough represents Aeneas' divine sanction. And psychological depth. The characters have complex inner lives and motivations. Virgil also uses flashback, starting the epic in the middle of the events, just like Homer, but with even more temporal complexity. For example, the fall of Troy is told as Aeneas' flashback to Dido in books 2 and 3. One of the most famous passages in the Aeneid is the description of the shield that Vulcan makes for Aeneas in Book 8. This clearly parallels the shield of Achilles, but while Homer's shield shows scenes of universal life, Virgil's shield depicts scenes from Roman history. This shield is pure propaganda, y'all. It places Augustus directly in the stream of Roman destiny, suggesting that all of history has been leading up to his rule. This contemporary political message couldn't be clearer. Now, the Aeneid ends with something mighty troubling. Aeneas killing Tumas in a rage. After Tumas is defeated and begs for mercy, Aeneas notices he's wearing a belt taken from Paulus, Aeneas' young ally who Tumas killed earlier. And this shockingly violent ending has troubled readers for centuries. It seems to contradict the Roman ideals of mercy expressed elsewhere in the epic. Some scholars believe Virgil intended to revise this ending, but died before completing the epic. Augustus ordered the unfinished poem published anyway. Whether intentional or not, this problematic ending raises questions. It raises questions about the empire and the cycle of violence that continued even in Rome's golden age. Let's take a moment to compare the Aeneid with earlier epics we've studied. Let's compare it with Gilgamesh. Both feature heroes who must accept their mortality. Both involve journeys to learn wisdom, but while Gilgamesh focuses on personal immortality, Aeneas focuses on the immortality of his people and city. Let's compare it with the Iliad. Now, both deal with the Trojan War from opposing sides, and both feature heroes who struggle with their fates. But while Achilles fights for personal glory, Aeneas fights for a future he'll never see. Now let's compare it with the Odyssey. Both involve long sea journeys and divine opposition. Both heroes face temptations that could prevent them from completing their journey. But while Odysseus' goal was to reunite with his family at home, Aeneas must create a new home in a strange land. Aeneid has shaped Western literature, perhaps more than any other book besides the Bible. His influence can be seen in Dante's Divine Comedy, Milton's Paradise Lost, and European national epics. It can even be found in American identity. The foundation of the United States saw themselves as creating a new Rome and drew on Virgilian imaging. Even our American exceptionalism, the idea that our nation has a special destiny, has roots in the Roman Empire of manifest destiny that Virgil articulated. One of the most fascinating things about the Aeneid is what scholars call its two voices, the public voice of imperial triumph and the private voice. On the surface, the epic glorifies Rome's imperial mission and Augustus's rule, but throughout the poem we see the terrible cost of empires. Dido's suicide, countless deaths in battle, towns destroyed, and families separated. Harvard scholar Adam Perry describes this as the voice of the victims that runs counter to the poem's official message. This ambivalence makes the Aeneid not just propaganda, but true literature that explores the complexities and contradictions of human expense. It's like my grandmama used to say, even the prettiest garden has some weeds that need pulling. Virgil shows us both the glory and the pain. The Aeneid gives us a Roman perspective on heroism, duty, destiny, that complements and contrasts with the Greek works we've studied. In the Aeneid, we see a new kind of hero, one who sacrifices personal happiness for a greater good he will never personally enjoy. This story asks us to consider the price of progress and the tension between individual desires and the collective. Next time, we'll look at selections from Ovid's Metamorphoses, which gives us yet another perspective on Roman literature, one that's playful, subversive, and focuses on transformation rather than destiny. It's like going from a serious political drama to a magical variety.